Me. All right. Go see you then. Yeah, we can't go out there. All right. My apologies for the delay. Just having some technical difficulties.
Okay, I was like, are you
It's,
sending me a link?
I sent you an invite. It should ring on your end.
Okay.
Sorry for the delay, everybody. We will get started in just a minute. I am just waiting for our presenter to pop on. She's having some issues with the link, so my apologies in the tech. Thank you for joining us. While we do wait for her, if you are not familiar with us, my name is Brandy Salvatore. I'm the case manager here at the Cohen Clinic. Um, Here we go. I'm the case manager here at the Cohen Clinic. Our clinic serves sorry, here we go. Our clinic serves our servicemen and women, their families, veterans, anyone that's been impacted by the duty of a service member. We are outpatient mental health, short-term, solution focused, evidence-based, all those really great things that we're looking forward to. Um, Let me get Ashley. Awesome. Ashley is here now, so I will give her a chance to introduce herself. Please excuse me there. Ashley, whenever you're ready, you should be able to um, share your screen.
I do not think I have those capabilities, unfortunately.
All right, let me just get that taken care of for you then. See if that gives you the opportunity to be able to share. It should have given you the capabilities.
See, it says I've been promoted to a panelist. I love it. Hi, everybody. Hope you're
There
all
we
doing
go.
awesome. Hi, everybody. Hope you're all doing well today. Might be helpful if you can also see me. I'm Dr. Ashley O'Connor. I have spent the last 15 years of my life trying to figure out and find out everything I can to know about the human-animal bond. I feel very fortunate to say that the Department of Veterans Affairs in the past 15 years has really had two big different programs where they looked at how canines can work with veterans in two different areas, and I've been able to work on both those programs. So I feel like I'm pretty well versed in this area, and then I'm just always making sure that I'm staying on top of everything. I know that this is a really hot topic, and that sometimes it can get pretty heated because a lot of people hear different things going on. And so the purpose of today is really just to share some stories from the work that I've done, as well as provide some education for you to take with you. It's not my job to be like, yes, you should or should not write an emotional support letter. However, I do hope that the education that I am going to provide is something that you can take with you in some of these further conversations that you might have. I know it's always funny for me too, because knowing just how passionate I am in this area, because I've seen the bond between horses and animals and cats and horses and people and cats and people and dogs and people, that people typically look at me and, they go, she's a dog person. She must want everybody to have a service dog. And it's like, no, that's not always it. I want to make sure that we're working to pair animals with humans in a way that is the most beneficial, and sometimes that means not, right? Um, but I know that more recently there's been a lot of different things that have been coming up. So again, I just want to provide some guidance on things that can be done, and potentially there might be some practice where you're like, oh, I didn't realize that potentially, like I know the Board of California for Psychologists, they say that there are very specific rules that people have to have before they write certain letters, right? Well, I didn't know that. So, I'm really hoping that I'm able to guide you in order to really help appropriately partner with animals in a number of different ways. I also have some stories, like I said, that I want to share. So, with that being said, before I open up my slides for today, I'd like us, everyone, to just take a moment to think about the last time you interacted with an animal, whether it was a cat or a mouse or a dog or a horse or whatever. And think about what emotions that experience brought up for you. Maybe comfort, maybe joy, maybe some anxiety. But I bet you that there was some kind of emotion that was there. And that moment says a lot about how powerful and personal the human animal bond truly is. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and open up, share my thoughts. All right. So, it'd be helpful for me to know what slides everybody, actually, that's not gonna work. Sorry. Give me 1 second. I always love how Zoom likes to change its like layout depending on, what you're doing. So let me try that again. Okay. So now are you seeing the big slides? And I can't see anybody anymore. So if somebody could just say yes or no, that'd be great.
We can't see anything. It
Can't,
your screen's not
can't see
sharing.
anything. Okay. Let's try that again then. Share. All right. Now can folks see something?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So, first off, what even is the human animal bond, right? So, when we talk about this, it's a mutually beneficial and dynamic relationship between people and animals that influences health and well-being outcomes. And when we talk about this, one thing that I really want to drive is that we're not just thinking about the human side of it, right? We also want to think about that partnership with the animal and not use the animal as a tool, but really thinking about how are we partnering with animals in our work or in life. I remember when I was working in one of the programs where I was actually pairing service dogs with veterans all around the Midwest. They used to have this thing at the VA of where it was like, okay, we had a team of people. Some of us were in the mental health field. Some of us were dog handlers who we're also veterans, right in time for tomorrow. And like the higher ups would often go, okay, well, those are the dog people talking, or those are the human people talking. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. It's not this or that. It's how are we working collaboratively? And I was really proud of that our supposed dog people were also thinking about the humans that were involved. And I was clearly thinking about the dogs involved. It actually made me go off and do something wild, which is like after I got my MSW and then my PhD, go back and get a second master's in the humane education world, because I really wanted to make sure that I was taking the animals that we were partnering with into account for different things. So there's a lot of different processes that happen in this human animal bond, and I'm going to talk about those first before I go into some other details of things. Like I said, this can be a really hot topic, and things change really quickly. And that's something that I worked to try to make sure that whenever something changes, I'm staying up to date so that I can go and provide the education to help people. I've published a couple of publications. I've done research in this field. And like I said, I've worked on those big initiatives. Right now, the way that I'm working on it at the Cohen Clinic is we're actually partnering with a service dog organization called Paws for Purple Hearts. They're not only in Alaska, they have other places in the US as well that they're involved in. But we're partnering with our local chapter up here to provide a post-traumatic stress psychoeducation group where we're really showing like this is what, triggers might look like, or this is what healing from trauma looks like, or these are, different things that we have to be mindful of. And then basically pairing that with the individuals can then be engaged in dog training and how dogs learn and seeing the parallel between overcoming trauma and some parallels that exist within, canine training and learning and everything else. So super excited for that. We've only been in for a couple of weeks. But so far I think it's going really well. So that's kind of my main thing right now. But this matters because science all the time has backed up the impact that animals and humans have on each other. And again, remembering that we always want to say partner rather than like using them in therapy, because that's what it is. It's a partnership. And those are two of my loves of my life. Link is a taller pup, and then the little one is my little Scully girl. So I'm going to discuss the science behind this a bit, provide an introduction to different types of animal assisted support, discuss service dog information, share a little bit about equine assisted therapy, and then how can we work with, people when they're either coming into our clinic if we're at front of the house, or we are, actively, maybe you're also a social worker or a psychologist or a therapist, and you want to learn more about how you can work with clients in that way. Or what happens if you're just in a hospital and you see a dog there? Like, what types of things can you do, should you not do, right? So again, there is a lot of science behind, the human animal bond, and I always love science and using that to back things up. So a lot goes on, actually. So physiologically, interacting with animals can lower cortisol levels and increase oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. So, right, some of our stress is going down and our bonding is improving. Psychologically, animals can provide unconditional acceptance and support. They can work in reducing loneliness and improving social interactions. And sometimes they can also act as bridges for communication, especially for people who might experience stigma or any kind of isolation. So, going back to our hormones, so oxytocin is often called the love hormone or the bonding molecule, and it's released when we engage in positive, nurturing interactions, right? Eye contact, touch, or even mutual gaze with an animal. Really love it because one of the trainers in week one of that group I was talking about, they, turned to the clients that we're working with and they said, who here has been told to never look a dog in the eyes because that, emits some kind of danger signal. And I think like everybody raised their hands and they're like, yeah, that's not true. What we actually do know is that this can increase bonding with an animal. Now, of course, there's going to be situations where it's not beneficial to do that, like if a dog is struggling with stress or aggression or anything else. But really, eye contact can create this oxytocin for both not only the human, but also the dog, if we're talking about the humans and dogs. So this release occurs in both, creating a feedback loop of really trust and safety, right? And there was a research article that was done by Nagasawa et al. In 2015 about this. Now, dopamine and serotonin, these are the reward and mood regulators. So these neurotransmitters elevate mood, motivation, and that sense of reward, explaining why interacting with animals can feel uplifting, it can feel soothing, and it can really just make our day better. For some, again, though, it's going to create the opposite if there's any kind of fair response to that. And so that's something that we always want to be cognizant of, that while these things are happening biologically, physically, if there's been any concerns of where somebody might be fearful of an animal, that's going to change the way things are. And again, it's something that we always want to think of. But in a therapeutic setting, the release of these chemicals really supports positive reinforcement, engagement, and emotional openness. Get to our endorphins, where, right, these help contribute to relaxation, physical calm, and they actually reduce pain perception and create a sense of comfort and well-being. And then finally, cortisol, which is our stress hormone, our decreases during animal interaction. So this helps regulate the body's stress response system, lowers heart rate, blood pressure, and promotes parasympathetic calming. So basically what's happening is a lot of our feel-good chemicals are getting released, and then those ones that might be more related to stress are typically getting reduced. So hey, more happy hormones and bonding, less of that stress, which promotes a lot of calm. And again, that reminder that these changes happen in both, at least animals and then the humans with it. And studies have shown that there's synchronized physiological responses that happen, such as that heart rate and that blood pressure between people and at least companion animals. So, what this means for individuals that are involved in mental health is that these aren't just a feel-good activity, but there's actually research that backs up that they're activating the same neurobiological pathways that we aim to engage in trauma recovery and attachment repair and stress regulation. And that bond is really priming the brain and body for healing. So, we just looked at the chemistry of connection, and I want to explore how these might translate into clinical outcomes. So, before I jump into our different types of animal assisted support, I want to share the story of Philomena. So, in the research study that I belonged in, where we were actually pairing dogs with veterans who were struggling from post-traumatic stress, we were pairing them with either a service dog or dogs that didn't quite meet the criteria for a service dog. However, they were still raised in the same way in the same places as the dogs who went on to become service dogs. What, our my organizational partner, Possible Purple Hearts, always talks about is how, not every dog is going to make it to be a service dog because they have to be really good at just paying attention to one person, just wanting to be there for one person. And so sometimes the dogs won't make it and they're either put into other roles, or they get adopted by loving parents or anything else. So in our study, we were pairing individuals with either the service dogs that made it or ones that didn't quite make it to that level. Now, Philomena was this beautiful lab golden mix. She was white and she was just adorable. She was, I think, 2.5 years old. She didn't make it to become a service dog. So she was paired with an individual in a different way. Sometimes if at the time of pairing the individual was on vacation or something else, I would hold on to the dog until he came back so we could make the pairing process happen. So I had to take care of, oh no, Philomena for like 5 days, I think it was, and I just fell in love with her. She was sweet and playful, did really well with the other dogs in my house. But most importantly, I was really stressed out by something at work, and she would come up into bed with me, and if I like was having a bad dream or something, just automatically would wake me up from it. Like I would just feel her paw, and I would just cuddle up with her, and I was like, man, if she is doing this for me, you can only imagine what she's going to do for the person that I pair her with, right? And now the couple that I paired her with, they were a little bit hesitant. They had never had a dog before, but the person's psychologist really thought that it could be helpful for them. So, couple said, okay, we're gonna like take care of a dog if we get paired with one, but there are rules. She's not going to go into our kitchen. She's not going to eat with us. She does not belong on furniture. Like, there were going to be rules in the house. So we said, okay, that's fine. As long as you are going to protect, take care of the dog, like having those rules in place is okay. It's what you need. So the couple gets paired with the dog, and of course it was an individual, but I say the couple because of my story. So first few weeks we go and visit, and sure enough, the puppy, the dog, she's not allowed in the kitchen yet. Okay. Slowly but surely we start visiting, and we notice that there is a dog cover on the couch now, and that Philomena is absolutely in the kitchen with us. Next time we go and visit, a couple of months later, Philomena's not home when we go and visit the individual that she was paired with. Hey, where's Philomena? She's at the nail salon. Yeah, so she started just going and she gets her nails done too. And yeah, it's like her day of beauty. Sorry, what? Just going to like a human nail salon? Yeah, they love her, they know her, they take care of her. Okay, sure. Unfortunately, the story changes a little bit of a beat because one of the individuals in this couple got diagnosed with cancer. They had to go to a really big hospital. And I'll talk about different types of animals as a support. So, necessarily, things weren't going the way that Philomena should have gone because if an animal is a type of animal, it should only be like one type. But technically, she was also wasn't a service dog, so she probably shouldn't have been going to the hospital. But she was going to the hospital, and man, it is what kept the individual going to cancer therapy and not just letting it knock them down. They went and they were so proud and would beam whenever they would share the stories of how Philomena was getting to meet a bunch of people that were also going through treatment, and she was just becoming the joy, and like the staff knew her. So in a way, she was acting not only for the person that she was paired with, but also acting in a form of a therapy animal where she was making other people who are also going through this okay. Um, the individual ended up passing away, and we made it to make sure that their partner could keep Philomena if they wanted to, because they were the one that was more hesitant. And I remember I'm going to pass off the paperwork so that Philomena can become theirs. And I'm not a feely person, even though I'm a social worker. But I remember, and the person wasn't either. They were filling out the paperwork, and they kept on just kind of like putting their hands out, and Philomena was like nudging them, but they're putting their hand out on the table, and I'm like, do you, do you want me to put my hand on top of yours? Yeah, please. Okay, I'll do that. Can you pet Philomena too? Of course I will. And they shared the story about how Philomena was a helpful bond in letting them not just think that their spouse was gone from them, but that reminder that they were always still there with them through the dog. So just like so much stuff happening, right? In this one story about just that power and that beauty. Now, going back to some of the things I already talked about. When we think about different types of animal assisted support, these are typically the main three things that we think about. So, with our therapy animals, these are typically animals that have parents they go home to or go home with. Sometimes people can throw around terms like comfort dogs, facility dogs. They all act a little bit differently, but basically, these animals provide support to many humans. So, I don't know of any, at least like our Cohen clinics, that have a facility dog yet. But I do know that there are some agencies, there's like dental offices, there's, of course, mental health agencies, there's schools that have a facility dog where their job is really to greet and be with whatever person is needed, like inside that facility, and just to provide that calming support that I just talked about with all of the hormones getting released or getting, moods are altered from the support. So again, these animals have parents that they go home to, as compared to our service dogs. So they're paired with just their one person. So they are specifically trained to complete at least one task to help mitigate a disability, whether that be physical or emotional. So again, rather than providing support to multiple people, they just have that one person that they're providing support to, and they're trained for this. Then we have our assistance animals, or our what some people call emotional support animals, where an individual has just found that their animal can provide them emotional support. The big thing to know about these animals is that they're not trained and they don't really have a lot of protections, so they can't be out in public. They can't be on flights unless somebody pays for a companion animal to be on the flight with them, like anybody can. However, they have some housing rights through the ADA and the HUD, but outside of that, they can't be allowed in public, can't be traveling, etc. So these are our three main things. And then of course we work with animals in other ways. I'll talk a little bit about equine therapy, where we partner with horses in a slightly different way. When we think about animals assisted support, these are like our big three. So I'm going to dive a bit deeper into our service dog land. Um, so in terms of overall ADA service dog policies, again, a person must have a physical or psychiatric disability that is covered under the ADA. There's a lot of like, uh, basically misinformation out there about what a service dog needs to look like in public, right? So I want you to think about this right now. What comes to mind when you think about someone with a service dog in public? And think about what feelings might come up for you. Do you feel admiration, curiosity, skepticism, any discomfort? Any ideas that a dog should look a certain way? Again, a lot of times there's a lot of misinformation that might sometimes inform our judgments or our initial reactions to things. So, while a lot of Goldens and Labs are really great for individuals who might be struggling from something like post-traumatic stress, there can be other dogs for that. I've seen a lot of people sometimes there might be like a little tiny dog that is just getting carried around from somebody. They may have a little service dog vest, and I usually see people be like, oh, yeah, okay. Guess what? Maybe that dog's helping that person with diabetes, informing them that their blood sugars are low, right? So I really want to work against kind of this judgment that comes up because dogs can really look like anything. Dog does not need any identification. They don't need a vest. And there's no such thing really as certification unless a dog's got them from a service dog agency and then they might like say, here's your certification. But nationally or policy wise, dogs do not need to be a vest and there's no such thing as certification. However, the dog has to be well mannered at all times. Big thing here is that I didn't feel like waking up for work this morning. Don't get me wrong, I love my job. But I have a bunch of paperwork and documentation I have to do from last week, so I'm super stressed out, right? So me waking up for work today, I was like, oh man, I don't want to go. Guess what? Working dogs, they sometimes feel the same way. They don't always want to be working either or out in public. And so it's that recognition, and that's where if somebody is saying has a service dog, it's that recognition, that bond with them of, oh, hey, buddy, you don't want to work today. Like, we're not going to bring you out because maybe you're not going to be well mannered outside, right? And then if a dog is not well mannered, it can be asked to leave, right? So I always talk with people like, you probably don't want to go through that like yourself, and dog just needs a break. And then finally, when a service dog or a dog is out in public, a person can only be asked two questions, and this is by the ADA standards. Those two questions is that a service dog? And what task does it do for you? Now, say you're one of our front desk warriors that is like taking care of everything. You work in the front desk of a health clinic or something else. You see a dog come in. Your policy is that only animal allowed is a service dog. There are different ways that you can ask this, right? You can ask this in an open, curious way where people might not be as kind of taken aback by it. And that's really the way that I suggest asking. I'm not saying don't ask, right? Because you want to make sure that people are following your policy. But there are ways to do it in a kind and gentle manner versus like an accusatory. Is that a service dog? Or, oh, is that your service dog? Awesome. What kind of task does it do for you? And then if not, hopefully your agency or wherever you might be working at has some kind of policy in terms of what you do next. Again, luckily for me, that's not my job or purpose here today. So again, it's just the things for you to know about and think about. So again, what types of service dogs are usual? I think we think a lot these days in terms of our psychiatric service dogs for post-traumatic stress. One big thing to note is that while they can work for other types of diagnoses, like schizophrenia or depression, anxiety, stuff like that, oftentimes it's more limited because of some of the tasks that the dogs are trained to do. Um, so you really want to think about that. And depending on the agency that you go to, they might have dogs for all different types of things. I saw a really great story about a dog being able to help an individual when they thought they were having an hallucination, and the dog could like help them differentiate from that with schizophrenia. But oftentimes, it can be more difficult to like train dogs that. And remember, training dogs have to be specifically trained for something. Course goes way back to like Scotland. I think had the first guide dogs for impaired vision. So I got to travel to Scotland last year, and it's like the most dog-friendly country I've ever been to, and it was absolutely amazing. There were like dogs eating in fancy restaurants and everything else, but they were all well-mannered. I want to also put that out there. But also a lot of the places where you would go to, they had donation boxes for like their guide dogs because they were really instrumental in pushing this out there for individuals who have impaired vision. Of course, it's mobility dogs, right? And again, thinking about the types of dogs that can be this, if somebody is, over 6 foot tall, they might need a different kind of breed because mobility wise, right? Think about the type of dog that could really be helpful for that. Then there are dogs for disorders like diabetes, seizures, hearing, developmental. I was talking with somebody from the service dog agency yesterday, and they were telling me, like I kind of shared earlier, about this little tiny dog that just kind of gets carried around with this person. And they are 98% of the time on target and telling that person that their blood sugar is low, right? There's different senses and smells and things that can happen, and these are what the dogs can sense. So really amazing, just the wide kind of view and how many different things individuals can do. But again, that reminder that service dogs are not pets. They are highly trained working animals that are performing specific tasks to mitigate a person's disability. And each partnership is really unique, again, built on trust, training, and daily cooperation. I'm going to skip to this real quick and just thinking about I always like to let people, when they are interested in getting paired with a service dog, letting them know the work that might go into it, right? Because it's a lifelong thing, right? And again, it's not just a luxury, but it's really a lifeline between that dog and that human. So a typical process is service dog pairing. Now, there are a lot of agencies that are getting built to where somebody can come in with their own dog and say, hey, I want to get trained with this. There's a lot of background work that goes into it, making sure that the dog might be suitable for that, thinking about what kinds of tasks it should be trained in, and making sure that, again, it can be a dog that is out in public for people. But when somebody is trying to get paired with a service dog through like an agency, this is the typical process. Again, sometimes it can look different. But the individual should locate a service dog agency that works with people from your state. So I'm up in Alaska. First thing I did when I moved up here was found the list of ADI accredited service dog agencies that will pair dogs with people in Alaska, and I have that list. So there is an ADI website, which is the accreditation for service dogs, one of them, one of the accredited bodies, and it'll tell you if you go to it, all the organizations that might be in your area or work with individuals from your area. Now, there are some agencies, of course, that are not accredited. And that's not to say that they are not reputable. But I typically will tell people to go for like if they're trying to find like a dog for post-traumatic stress, to go to one that's ADI accredited because there is some background for that, and they will have some more protections around them, depending on where they're at. But again, that's not to say that there are other organizations that are not accredited that are also, helping pair people with really great dogs. Person typically will complete a thorough application, may require a provider to write something. This is a question I get a lot. If somebody wants me to fill out their service dog, application, how do I know that a service dog is going to be good for them? Or how do I know that they're going to be able to take care of it? This is the one area, unlike requests for like emotional support letters or other letters, that I say, the great thing about writing a letter for a service dog application is that you're not the one defining that. You're sharing whatever, as long as, right, the person has completed like a release for you to be able to do so, other information. And then the agency is taking that and they're looking at it saying yes or no to the person. So that's not your job. So I always suggest, basically if somebody comes to you and they want like some kind of reference for a service dog agency, to write the information you know. And again, at the end of the day, you're not the one saying, yes, that person should be paired with a dog or not. Some might ask for an application fee. Usually it's around $50 or so. Sometimes an agency will ask for money. So these dogs are typically like 25,000 to $50,000 is how much it costs to really train a dog like this. Now, at least for veterans, there's a lot of agencies that will pair individuals for free. So, but these are some of the questions that you should be thinking of. Is there an application fee? Is there a payment due for the dog? Next up, if somebody makes it through that initial application, it's typically an interview, a really in-depth interview with the service dog agency. Usually takes about an hour or two to figure out, again, trying to look for safety concerns. Is this dog going to be helpful for them? What types of like attributes should the dog have? Because if I have somebody who's really active, who's trying to get paired with a dog, well, then I'm going to want to make sure that the dog is active and can go on hikes and do all this stuff. If I get, somebody who isn't active, right, then I'm going to want to try to find a dog that's going to be okay with that as well. So there's a lot that's going on in the pairing process. I think more recently, the waits to get paired with them have gone down, but typically in the past, they've been anywhere between like a year to 2 years, can be longer, can be shorter. And then when the dog is ready, an individual usually has to travel to wherever the site is. And that takes anywhere between a week or two. And again, this is just a typical process. It can look different at other organizations. And they live, breathe. Every single thing is about learning how to be with that dog in this time. And then, of course, continuing that training through the dog's life and making sure that they're upkeeping it, because if you don't upkeep training, dog's not going to be able to work anymore. Going back to this question, so this is what I got a lot when I was working at the VA. So does the VA help veterans get service dogs? The quick answer, very quick answer on this is no. So the VA doesn't pay or pair veterans with service dogs. Again, the only time that they did actively do that was during the research study that was a few years ago. They don't pay for any aspect of training for a dog to become a service dog. Um, and, you know, essentially the quick answer is no. However, each VA, there's a policy out there, should be tasked with having somebody who has the role of a service dog champion. Now, depending on where you're at, some VAs, service dog champion is going to be super educated, really knowledgeable, and other times they might be trying to learn from the bigger network still. So giving grace to that and knowing that people that are in this role can have very much different levels of, knowledge. But the role of them is really to educate people about service dog pairing rights, update service dog VA policies, and then to assist with issues. And again, depending on the VA that they're at, they might have different roles, like trying to be more active with this. There's also a VA prosthetics program, which is very notorious for being known as being very difficult to get approved for. Some of the information that's out on the interwebs about this program makes it seem like this program, again, helps find the dog for the individual to be paired with, which it doesn't. What it actually does is it provides monetary support for a mobility dog. Now, there can be psychiatric mobility dogs. I want to put that out there, but that's what this program is for. So they pay for this. They pay for health insurance for the dog and for travel, but somebody has to get approved for this program. Like there's no back pay or anything. So say somebody applies for it and then they go and travel down, they pay for their travel, for room and board, everything else. They can't come back up and then be approved and then get that money back. So again, they had to be approved prior to getting this. And that's really right now the VA's role in helping at least veterans get service dogs. So moving on from, my canine land, I wanted to share a little bit about equine assisted therapy because this is another topic that I hear a lot about. And there are different ways that individuals can work with, like with horses in therapy. Some are riding, some are not. I'm trained specifically in a non-riding type of therapy, so that's the one that I wanted to share about. Sometimes you'll see it like shortened as EAT. And what this kind of therapy does is it's a collaborative relationship between the client, a therapist, a horse specialist, and a horse. And it works to foster connection through observation and emotional attunement to help clients engage with horses on a deeper level, come up with like what's actually going on with them, maybe what's underlying some of the concerns that they're feeling. And it's really incredible, just the way that it works. Um, Now, some of you may have heard EGALA, so that's how I'm trained. I'm trained in the EGALA model, which is really kind of focused more so on acceptance and commitment therapeutic type of lens, but really there's just so much observation that's involved in this. So in terms of the professional guidance, again, it's conducted by a licensed mental health professional in partnership with an equine specialist, again, making sure that the horse's health and well-being is also taken into account, and creating a really safe and supportive environment for clients to explore their emotional experiences. It focuses on the human-horse relationship rather than riding. Again, rather than really that relationship with the clinician. The clinician is often asking questions, but really it's all about that relationship through the human and the horse. And then research shows that equine assisted therapy can significantly improve trauma processing and trust for clients, again, leading to greater emotional healing and enhanced coping strategies. For this, I was skeptical, right? I knew horses helped, but I'm not gonna lie, I've always been a little bit afraid of horses because of their power and, just their strength and everything else. So when I was given the opportunity to get trained in Igala, it was a month before I was supposed to be going in for spinal surgery. I was super anxious about the spinal surgery. I was super anxious about having to ask the people in my life for help because I'm a therapist. I don't ask people for help. I provide help, right? Come on. So I went, and again, I was like, I don't understand how this works. Like, they're telling us it just kind of unfolds naturally, but we need to observe and we need to ask questions. The way that the training I went to did it was they actually basically made us in training go through the process of the therapy. Like, they made us act as a client and go and be with the horses in the way that we might assist a client in doing. So there's one day where I was kind of having a lot of big feelings about my upcoming surgery, about telling people even that I like had a chronic illness, and it was my turn to go out and be a client. So we had a bunch of horses in our area that we were in, but those weren't the horses that like I was really looking at. There was this beautiful black horse a little bit off in the distance that was laying down, and I was like, what's like, why are they separated from the rest of its pack? Like, first off, like, is it okay? Is it struggling? Because I heard that some of the horses in the other stables were ones that maybe had some emotional concerns themselves because the farm I was on was a rescue farm. And so, for whatever reason, this black horse just really caught my view. And I'm out there and I'm watching and I'm like, what is the point of this? Okay, I'm just going to observe this horse. I don't understand. Okay, like let me think about some stuff. And all of a sudden, these two birds came and landed on top of the horse. And I was like, huh, I guess that horse isn't alone anymore. Like the birds felt comfortable going and landing on him. He seems pretty happy to have this here. And like, oh, know what? This realization of like, yes, you can ask for help. No, you're not just a burden on everybody. And yes, things are going to be okay if you build community. Like, just came out of me observing this. Still no clue exactly how it quite works, but the clinician that was teaching us, and then the horse specialist that was teaching us came over, and they saw this unfold because that was their job. And then their job was to ask me about the experience so that I could say, like, yes, this did just happen. And for me to understand more about, like, the phenomenon that just happened. So it's just really incredible. And again, another way to think about that human animal bond. So I've got one more slide. There are a couple more stories I wanted to share, but unfortunately, I might not have time for that. Because I want to make sure that we get to this part, which is this is that connecting clients to our resources. So, a lot of times clients will have questions or ask for different letters or things to be written. The big thing is to know that for the majority of things, letters are not needed. The one time again, or big times that letters are needed is one for the service dog organization if somebody is applying to a service dog agency. And again, you're not the one saying yay or nay to that. And two, for reasonable accommodations. Now, big thing to know is this HUD notice tells people everything they need to know about if they have what they call an emotional support animal and they are trying to get housing support for it. There's a list of everything that a landlord could ask or anything else. So I highly suggest checking that notice out and also knowing and finding out if the state, if you're licensed in any way, and you're thinking about writing letters, making sure that you know any of the requirements or state guidelines for your license, super important. The other thing to know about reasonable accommodations is that if somebody has a service dog and they're trying to bring that service dog in to work with them, there are different protections. It's not just allowed in work like it is out in public. Somebody actually has to go through and request the service dog to be a reasonable accommodation before that dog can go to work with them. This is something a lot of people don't know about, and it's something that's super important in that recognition because it can be really frustrating for a person to think that, I just got paired with a service dog and can bring it to work now. Oh, wait, why are they telling me I can't? It's allowed in public. Oh my gosh. No, in this instance, service dog for work reasons needs to be requested as a reasonable accommodation. Okay. Second part of it is again, so if somebody is asking for a letter for their emotional support cat to travel with them, it's going to be a no because emotional support animals are not allowed to travel. Again, only protections they have are housing. Service dogs also do not need letters. Back in the day, they needed letters for airports. However, luckily, the DOT has taken that burden off of the providers. And now, for travel for service dogs, they need to get approval from the DOT. I should probably go back and say the only type of animals that can be a service animal is a dog and in very rare instances, a miniature pony. I've never seen a miniature pony out working. I'd love to see it one day, right? But for mobility issues, might kind of make sense. Might want to think about bringing that mobility animal though on a plane, right? So when we're talking about letters for, when we're talking about rather service animals going on planes, we're really just talking about service dogs being able to go on planes. For this, individual needs to go on the DOT website, Department of Transportation, fill in an application, basically saying, I have a service animal. This is who trained it. It can be self-trained or whatever. They just have to put that information in. And then the DOT comes back and says, yay or nay. Now, if the dog gets, shown like, yes, this is a service dog, be given an independent number, and then that's what the person takes this approval with them when they go onto planes. Sometimes people will still ask for a letter from a provider to bring their service dog on a plane, thinking that it's going to help with this. But again, it's always a no because a service dog letter, it's not going to help, right? There's also, again, no service dog certification letters. So if somebody comes in and asks, hey, I need to certify that my dog is a service dog, no such thing. That's not on you. There's no national register or anything else. Okay. Last thing is that if you're interested in trying to help support people in this way, making sure again that you know who your local service dog agencies are. Again, I highly suggest going through the Assistance Dog International. The email is here. Um, and the agencies a lot of times will offer to help assist individuals when they have questions. So like up here in Alaska, Paws for Purple Hearts, if somebody's interested in getting a service dog, they'll say, send them over to us. We'll sit them down, even if like we're not going to be the right place because we don't do seizure dogs. We'll still sit down with them and help them try to find an agency that does or help them fill applications. So reach out to your local service dog agency and see, are they also somebody who's willing to help or anything else, right? Because again, such a great resource to have that up here in Alaska, and to have built that relationship and then knowing like where we can send people if they are asking for help. I think it's covered a lot of what I wanted to. But I don't know if we have time for questions. It's 12:55. I know typically people have something before one, or at least it's one in Alaska, wherever you're at. But please feel free. I have my email there. So if you have any questions, or anything else, at aoconnor@akbh.org. I'm always happy to communicate different things, chat about whatever. Um, come up with ideas for fun therapy or anything else. So I'm going to stop my slides and then bring it back over to Brandy and see if there's any questions or if we have time for that or anything else.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, you are welcome to unmute or drop them in the chat and I can ask Ashley, Dr. O'Connor. I did have a quick question actually, because I get a lot of times, can you touch on, I have a dog. It's a really great dog, and I really love this dog, and I'm really bonded already. Are there agencies out there that can train my dog to be a service dog?
So the answer to that is there might be one in your area, but you want to make sure that it's a reputable place, and it's not just somebody making promises when this animal not be able to. Typically, a reputable organization that can help with this, they'll do that. They'll say, "Hey, we're going to put it through a temperament test because not every dog is going to meet that." Or they might even say, "Look, we really don't know if your dog is going to be able to become a service dog. We want you to know that up front because you're paying for this service, right?" So you really want somebody who is looking at that temperament and having the conversation with somebody, in terms of that. And then remembering that a service dog needs to be trained in at least one task that's going to help mitigate that disability. So that's what a good reputable organization will do is again, will this type of dog be able to help with this type of thing? So yeah, good question. And the other part is sometimes people be like, oh, they only need to be, have one thing that they're trained in, or, there's no kind of certification for this. Can I just say my dog is a service dog? Well, the answer for that is A, do you want to be sued in case anything happens in public? And B, there are some states, Alaska's not one of them, but there are some states where you actually, it is illegal to say a service dog, to say a dog is a service dog when it is not. So keeping that in mind.
Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. I haven't seen any other questions come in. If that changes, you all have my email through the registrations, and I can also link you up with Ashley. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to circle back around, and we're happy to reach out and connect with you to get those answered. But that's all I have. So if anybody else has anything else, we can wrap it up, and I hope you all have a great day.
Yeah, have a great day, everybody.